where is Australia at risk in falling behind globally
Yeah.
in AI, and what would it take? Or is it going to take to catch up?
Yeah. So again, there's a conversation that I don't think it's in the past, and it never probably should have existed, which is, why don't we have a large language model in Australia? The reality is there's a good reason why the US and China have produced the oligopoly of large language models, and it's because, remember I mentioned 3 trillion is being invested in 3 years' time, over a period of 3 years. So you need a lot of capital deployment. You need the skills. The skills only really exist in quantity in the US and China. And so that horse is bolted. Now, is it possible for a middle power to build a medium-sized language model or a small language model? Well, we can look at the experiment of Mistral in France, and you can have a point of view as to how useful that is. Where I think it's less ambiguous, so playing in the digital, in that layer of the infrastructure is probably not an option. Now, lots of people are playing in the data center business in Australia, and that's a very healthy business that provides services that are integral to the delivery of AI. So that's a great place. There's a place which is important, which is around data sovereignty in this world of uncertain geopolitics. I think many people would think it's reasonable that we wanted to keep sensitive data onshore. Depending on your definition of data, it's pretty obvious that that would be true of defense data, but it may well be true of healthcare data and any personal information. And so to the extent, depending on how the regulatory world lands on that, then making sure that data can be kept onshore in all circumstances, traceably and with audit trails, is important and is valuable as well. And that has some quite important technology implications. So if, for example, we're using voice as a input-output technique, so if you're going to talk to an AI as opposed to message it or email it, then those voice applications usually sit offshore at the moment. And so we can and should make sure that they sit onshore and that we can preserve data sovereignty in a multimodal way. And so that's an interesting thing to think about. But by far and away, the biggest impact answer to your question is adoption, that we get faster adoption in Australia than anywhere else. Now, how can we do that? How can we make our banks and our telcos and our retailers perform better than retailers elsewhere? Because then
this question
we can make more
how
profit.
Do we accelerate that?
This comes back to is our governance and our leadership and our regulatory and our
Is there a policy lever you would suggest?
Sure, it's all of the above. We shouldn't look to the government to solve that issue. Yep. It's primarily an issue that boards and executives should lean into. Yep. But can we help from a policy point of view? Can we create AI incentives? Can we certainly help the middle market and the small business market to adopt agentic solutions?
Yep.
Absolutely. And would that have an impact on the economy?
Yep.
Absolutely. So those are the places. And Australia has been known to innovate in technology. If you look at some of the remote monitoring centers for mines, for example, when we expanded iron ore in a way that had we expanded at the productivity levels of past mines,
yep,
we just couldn't have done it economically. We couldn't have done it workforce-wise. There weren't the people to be able to do that. So Australia was forced to innovate, to find technology solutions to increase the productivity of mines, hence why we have driverless trucks and driverless trains and remote operating centers and all the wonderful things that we have. Now, there's an AI analog to that. We should be doing that.